Now, on the back of the ANC Regional Meeting in Nelson Mandela Bay tomorrow, we take a look at governance problems in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Municipality problems are nothing new. The municipality is on the brink of collapse, partly due to internal power struggles within the ANC. For more, we are joined by Dr Ongama Mtika, political analyst and lecturer at the Nelson Mandela University. Dr. Mtika, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. What do you expect coming out of tomorrow's regional meeting, also considering all that's been happening in that municipality?
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one. We've got a lot of regional bigwigs allied with their provincial counterparts that are running to lead the city. In terms of the latest, who has finally been nominated, I haven't really kept, details in terms of the last 24 hours. But we've had for the longest time a three-way race here where ANC leader Sabelo Nkohlu, Babalwa Lobishe, and there were talks of Wandisile Chikeka, but also with currently on step aside former secretary of the region who wields significant power here, also lingering somewhere. But it seems like this conference happens while he is still on step aside. So I think that he's probably fallen off the race or consolidated with other groups. But the challenge here is that there seems to be little by way of inspiration from the ANC that whatever outcome from this is going to yield significantly positive results for the city. That's because administratively the party is at its weakest. So it is not also, coming up with an inspirational vision. You don't, more than the fact that these candidates are running for office, you don't get a sense of what is it that they are rallying the city behind. There was a time, for example, when Danny Jordan was here, he was talking about the 5 golden years. If you go back to the time of Zanokolo Wayile, there was a sense of vision and wanting to drive the city somewhere. We are in the 6th biggest metropolitan municipality in South Africa, but these leaders are running office as though they were running office back in my, in fact, in my home, which is Paddy. You've got a much more visionary mayor than you have in in the richest metro in the Eastern Cape. So it leaves much to be desired. And whichever faction wins here, there isn't much inspiration for what that means for the city.
You said something quite interesting there about administratively the party is at its weakest. What do you make of that call to action letter made by the spiritual leaders of the province as well, writing directly to the president himself to address their concerns going on in the province, and even saying that we don't get involved in politics, but right now this is a dire situation. They've already tried to make contact with the mayor, with the premier, and it wasn't fruitful. So what do you make of that call to action letter?
It's very crucial that stakeholders put as much pressure as they can to political elites. So it's very welcome. And the issue is that the ANC in recent years has proved incapable of really taking stakeholders and actually giving effect to resolving the issues that stakeholders are raising. There would be acknowledgements in some instances where the concerns of stakeholders are being acknowledged, but beyond that, there's little by way of changes that gets to be done. The reason that is the case, it's because very often all the changes that have needed to be done in this city have happened at times when the provincial elites were attempting to shape subnational structures for themselves so that the outcomes of conferences here can talk to their campaigns for provincial offices. Unfortunately, that is the case now. Throughout the history of the necessary political changes that needed to be made in this city, it's always been negatively affected by the need of those sitting in the province to try and shape outcomes here to fit their agenda. And sometimes that has had nothing to do with the good governance of the city or putting their best candidates who can actually lead the city.
And speaking about necessary political changes, in that letter as well, what was voiced by this religious and spiritual community was to say that this coalition that consists of mainly the ANC and other smaller parties is not a direct reflection of what the voters necessarily voted for, because you've got these other smaller parties who they believe are strongholding the ANC. What do you make of that? Should, in the case like this, where you have an ANC that received around 40% there and a DA that received a little over 20% there as well, should the dominant two then come together, or is it about the politicians coming together and deciding who will represent the constituency?
Yeah, I think the ANC and the DA, it's about time that they actually thought more seriously about that as a viable, political alternative for the city. Because what happens is that some of these political parties that are one-seat parties wield too much power that even when they are embroiled in scandals, it's difficult to deal with them. For example, you've got the deputy mayor who, on a given day, I mean, is a generally good person, except that he's made significant mistakes while in government, which then, and in fact, unfortunate mistakes while in government, which then beg for decisive action to be taken. But when you are governing with parties that have got small seats, you can't really do that because every seat counts. Once you make a move, then the coalition is affected. Likewise, it's not like the ANC itself is a good party that has got to do what is right. Even they themselves have allowed a situation where municipal officials have also, run rampant when it comes to collapsing things, and there's a culture of no accountability. So it's time that a new approach was tried here.
And that new approach, as well, could be a different approach, but also new instead. We heard the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking earlier today on the back of that special NEC, saying that exactly about accountability. Now, considering what could ever be the possible outcome of the conference that's going to take place in that region tomorrow in Nelson Mandela Bay, considering also the Auditor General's damning findings when it comes to that municipality as well, does it even matter who comes out strong of this conference, because the books of the Metro already are looking quite dire? And when it comes to the accountability that you speak of and that the president is saying they'll be much harder on, there aren't any empirical evidence that shows that they've already taken that accountability stance seriously.
The problem is that the ANC has entrenched a culture that in order to secure office, sustain office, or retain office, or leave office, it has nothing to do with how you are performing in government. It has to do with which regional bigwigs you are aligned with, and who those regional and provincial bigwigs are aligned with nationally in the politics of patronage of the ANC. And that whether that patronage is siphoning resources out of the state or building a party-based machinery to ensure some people survive, some do not at a national level. The bottom line is both of them have nothing to do with good governance. So the ANC needed a long time ago to modernize how office is secured in the party by opening up campaigning to be free, to be done very early, so that people can campaign on the basis of why they should be elected and mention what good they have done in government or at the party building level in order for them to be to be kept in office. There's none of that's taken into account. All that matters is which deals can you make with who brings how many numbers to your campaign. That's all that matters. Now, the reason why I say that when you are asking about capacity to implement corrective action based on Auditor General findings is that that's what the crux of the matter is. That's where failure to take political action, such as recalling people, getting them to resign, is hamstrung. It's hamstrung by elite interests and alliances that keep not just local politicians in power, but their national counterparts. So if a politician whom the Auditor General or a department that the Auditor General has said needs to be looked at affects a particular politician, moving against that politician may not just affect local politics, but provincial and national. That's where the problem is with the ANC.
The crux of the matter. Dr. Mtika, always a pleasure to get your insights when it comes to these matters. Really appreciate your time.